Okay, in this video, we're going to have a look at a few other functions relating to macros. So if I click on the view macros on the drop down and select view macros, you can see all the macros here. And this is the one thing I want to show you is you can, of course, delete a macro. So for example, if I wanted to delete that absolute reference, I made a mistake. I recorded it using absolute references instead of relative references, for example. I can just highlight it over there and I click on delete and it will warn me, do you want to delete it? And if I say yes, that macro will no longer be there. So if I click on this view macros now, you'll see the only one is the relative reference. Okay, so that's the one thing I wanted to show you. The second thing is when you initially record a macro, right? I'm just going to cancel. So if I start the recording process, you'll see it gives you an option to put a shortcut key in. So what that means is that after you've recorded this macro, whenever you use the shortcut key, it will run the macro. Now I'm going to cancel here and I'm going to show you that even if you go to an existing macro, like this particular one, relative reference, if we click on options, we can still set a shortcut key. So let's actually do that. Now, one of the things I do want to highlight is when, the option that Excel gives you here is control plus a key. But very often control plus O or control plus P or whatever the typical letters that you would use, those already are shortcut keys in Excel. So it's going to be a problem in that it's going to conflict with an existing shortcut. So the way I recommend getting around that is use a control plus a shift and a key. So say for example, I'm going to say that this particular one we're going to keep the shift key in and press the W. So the shortcut key becomes control plus shift plus W. I mean, I just chose W as an example. You could use whatever it is, but the key point I wanted to point out, or why you use the shift, is so that it doesn't actually conflict with other shortcut keys, because most of the control plus a letter alone are shortcuts that already exist in Excel, right? So once I have the shortcut control plus shift plus W and I say okay, right? And I now basically close this. If I'm saying this particular cell and I just type in, keep my control key in plus the shift and the W, it immediately runs that macro. So it's just a quicker way to run a macro. Remember earlier on we looked at this quick access bar as one way of doing it. And another way of doing it is to basically create your own shortcut key. The third thing we want to look at in this particular video, when viewing a macro, what you need to understand that this macro has actually got code behind it, right? So if I click into the step into, right, what will happen is you'll actually see the code that this macro is actually made up of. So this is in a language that's called Visual Basic for Applications. You can see it there. Right, so somebody that knows how to code in can actually type out the instructions. So what we did was we did various keystrokes and typed in things, and what Excel was doing in the background was it was generating the code that made up that macro. So that's just one thing to be aware of. Now, one of the things that you can do, you'll see here under the debug option, the F8 is called a step into. And what a step into basically does, it runs each thing separately, each instruction separately. So you can see how the macro is, generated step by step, right? So for example, let's say I basically have clicked over here, right? And I now go into, if I just hover over that, I go into it and I press the F8 key. You'll see that the first thing says active cell.formula1 RC1 is equal to hello. I'm just gonna resize this particular window so you can actually see what's happening. Let's actually drag it over here. So I press F8, right, one time, and you can see it put the word in hello. If I press F8 again, it's saying go in and actually select one cell down. That's what this particular command was doing. Then it's going to put the value there in. If I press F8 again, it does the value there. And if I press it again, it's saying select the cell below it and end the procedure. So F8 shows you, if I press F8, it basically runs the macro step by step. This isn't really very important for you to know at this stage, but later on, if you get to the point where you are writing out your own macros and you're learning Visual Basic for Applications, it's quite important to know how to step into a macro. Now, it's important to know this is a separate window. You can simply basically close it and we're back to the normal thing. So just to recap that, in order to do that, we were viewing the macros, and it's when we clicked into step into that it opened up that Visual Basic for Applications.